We had a really big funeral here on Friday at church, the funeral of a man called Racco, who was a big character in this community. And a couple of people did a quick head count of people in this building and who were outside for the funeral. And we reckon there were about 1,000 people here to honour this man's life. With it, we recognised came an opportunity for us to be a loving Christian community, a loving Christian presence in the midst of real sadness. The opportunity to be a sign and a symbol of God's presence in the world, and specifically God's presence here with us in that moment. And afterwards, I was chatting to people, and I had a particular conversation, a very short conversation with a woman who just came and thanked me for the service and said that was very spiritual. And I didn't get a chance to ask her what she meant, but it got me thinking, what did she mean? What did she take away from that service in that she gave the word spiritual? It was very spiritual. Was it that she sensed something of the presence of God in this space? Or was it in something that was said or something that was done? Was there an awareness of God's presence in some way through the events of that funeral? Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be journeying through one of the better known of the Psalms, Psalm 139. I know it's a favourite of many people. We're going to be looking at what we might learn of God and how God works in the world and works in our lives. But it's important, I think, to say, and I have said this a few times over the last few weeks, that we see the Old Testament through the lens of the New Testament, through the lens of Jesus. It helps us to gain a greater understanding of what God might be saying to us. And the Psalms are a beautiful example of human beings pouring out their hearts to God, based and rooted in real life experience, in the mess and in the joy of life. So I share with you Psalm 139 and the first 12 verses. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high that I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you're there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night. Even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. So this psalm is attributed to David, and in it, in that particular part of the psalm that we're looking at this evening, then we recognize that David is reflecting on the presence of God. And I guess if I was to offer a sentence that explains these first 12 verses, it would definitely include these words. God is in our midst, whether we know it or not. And that is part of the faith that we have as Christians. God is in our midst, whether we know it or not. Have you ever experienced a time when you feel that God is absent, that God is gone? I have. I've certainly had moments in my life when I've felt the absence of God. Perhaps some of you are in that place now. Perhaps you're struggling to find God in the midst of whatever's going on in your life at the moment. I wonder, why is it that this knowledge of God's constant presence is so difficult for us to grasp? Is it because we get so easily distracted by whatever's going on in and around us? Is it that sometimes circumstances become so difficult, so fraught, so stressful, that we get so wrapped up in that we become blind to God with us? Is it that there are times when sin gets in the way, when there are things that aren't right in our lives and that barrier seems to be built up between us and God, and so we lose that connection? Is it because we know how imperfect our lives are and we wonder how God would ever want to be part of that? Perhaps there's a whole variety of reasons why sometimes we experience what we would see as the absence of God. But I guess that's where faith comes in, because our Christian faith will tell us that whether we're in the good times or in the bad times, easy or difficult, our faith wants to remind us that God is still with us, that God is still present, and that God will always remain with us. Do you think that there are places you can go where God is not? Psalm 139 would want us to think again if the answer to that question is yes. If I go up to heaven, the psalm tells us, God, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths and Sheol, even hell, God, you're there. If I go to that side, if I go over there, wherever I go in this world, God, you are there. And that is one of the affirmations in this psalm. I wonder whether there are times when we act as if God is not present in a particular place or at a particular moment, in a particular situation. Why? Why do we do that? And how would conscious acknowledgement of God's presence change our attitudes and behavior? If we always behaved as if God is always with us, which he is, but if we behaved as if he was, would that change the way we are? Would that change the way we speak, the way we relate, the way we make choices, and so on? How would we act differently if we really lived by the knowledge that no matter what we do, no matter where we go, no matter what we think, God is here? Would it change anything for you if you lived in that reality day by day, moment by moment? And as I ask myself that same question, then I become aware that there are times when I don't always act as if God is here, listening into the conversation, being part of whatever's going on in the day-to-day and the moment-by-moment things. Yes, I think my behaviors would change if I lived by that constant awareness of God present in every moment. But David points out to us that it's not just about God who is sitting up there in heaven somewhere, looking down and observing what's going on. No, it's more than that. This is not about a passive God, but present and active. God in amongst it all with us. Not merely observing, but part of whatever is going on. Present throughout. And though there are times, certainly there are times when the majority of us, if not all of us, will struggle to find the presence of God. When we journey into a closer and closer walk with God, then we find that we are better able to tune in to the divine presence. We're better able to both acknowledge and to recognize God's presence in our midst, whatever our midst might look like. I think one of the key markers of a mature Christian faith is something of a consistent walk with God, a consistent walk. A one that even if the terrain changes around us, means we still continue on that journey. We still continue on that walk. We might find that we slow down. We might find that we stumble from time to time if the path becomes difficult, but we consistently attempt in the strength of God to journey onward, to keep moving closer and closer towards the will and the ways of God. To continue to live according to the knowledge of God's constant and consistent presence with us. So one of the challenges that I encourage each one of us to take away from these first few chapters of this psalm is this: God is with us whether we know it or not. God is with us in the reality of our lives this coming week. Are we ready to take a deeper step into a mature walk with him, where we tune in to the divine presence with us?